This is the Puck Poolies podcast with Matt Larkin and Stephen Ellis.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to a new edition of the Puck Poolies podcast. 40 episodes now. Matt Larkin here with Stephen Ellis, ready to talk fantasy hockey as always. Can't believe we're already 40 into this thing. And Stephen, what's going on? I know you've been having some struggles in your league. Are things starting to turn around yet?
So struggles, maybe a bit of a. I wouldn't say that's fully accurate. I'm still second in points. Let's just say this. Every matchup was pretty close in my pool this past week. It came down to Anaheim versus Edmonton to decide what happened. And it literally got to the point of got a couple guys, I'm just like, Mason McTavish, please just shoot a puck, do something, do something. I need you to do something here at the end. And then, my opponent I was playing with had nobody in that final game, and I had a couple guys. I just needed someone to go out there and win. I lost by 4 points, which again in a 16 thing, over 400 points a week. That's like the difference of one power play goal. That's why I really needed something to happen there. I didn't play. I think it was Tolvin in one night, and he had a great night, and that didn't work out. And for whatever reason, whenever I do my auto set lines, whenever there's too many players, Jack Hughes is always listed as a benched player. And one day I didn't notice that. I just assumed that he was going to be there. But that's okay because he actually lost points that day. So that was okay. But another so yeah, that was a tough one. But got to give a shout out to Mariano for beating me this week. And then the other guy who's first in the league, David, he won by 1 point. And it was literally like a shot in the final 2 minutes of the last game. Like, that's dramatic. That's a way that's how you do it. So I'm facing the fifth place team this week. I have a chance to potentially maybe get back into first place. We'll see. But that was a tough way to lose because the guy I'm chasing won by 1 point and I lost by 4.
Yeah, that's a bad beat. I was on the other end of it because I had Darnell Nurse and Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. So they single-handedly flipped my match and I won on that last game. So I won again. I beat one of the weaker teams, but I got a nice decisive win because of those two. And now I think I'm 15 games over 500. But what happened in my league last week was kind of an all-time moment. Our league is more than 20 years old, an all-time first. So I continued my trend of going full heel turn, turning into a powerhouse seller. I had this extra pick that I mentioned on the last podcast that I was able to finagle. I turned that into Tyler Toffoli. So I acquired another piece. So I basically turned a first and a third into Crosby, Dubois, Nugent-Hopkins, and Toffoli. But the person who traded me Tyler Toffoli did it, accepted the offer while his wife was in labor.
Oh.
So,
okay.
Yeah, that was an all-timer. We couldn't believe it. The first ever mid-labor trade. I don't know if she knows this. Maybe I'll tell her in like a year. But hey, if you're a parent, you've been through the process before, it is long. It's not like labor goes in an hour. Even a short labor can still be 10, 11 hours, right? So you do have those idle moments. And this GM accepted my offer. But of course, being the villain that I am in my league, everyone turned to me. It's like, oh my God, I can't believe you stooped so low that you sent this guy a trade offer when you knew his wife was in labor. I didn't send that offer mid-labor. The offer was already up. I did send an offer during the labor, but he didn't accept that one. Okay, so they were close, but it's not exactly how it played out.
Wow, that's a new one.
Yeah, it's an all-timer. It's a first for our league. I think it's a proud moment that will live on forever. But let's stop talking about our leagues now and start helping people with theirs. So let's do our pickup, Stephen.
All right, let's start the shallow pickup with Trevor Moore.
Yes, Trevor Moore, who is on my team because I picked him up. He's available in 59% of leagues. And this is someone who was a little bit of an afterthought going into the season because he was often playing on a line that was sort of checky in nature, right? It's with Philip Deneau and Victor Arvidsson, and then with Pierre-Luc Dubois coming onto the team, it wasn't really known where, if Jano becomes the third line center, then does that mean Trevor Moore's a third line left winger? But it's not how things have played out. In part because of the injury to Arvidsson, Trevor Moore is playing on the second line. He's been really great. 11 goals, 19 points in 19 games. Last year was the unluckiest shooter in the entire league, 6%. This year, shooting 20%. So what it tells me, on one hand, I think you could argue he's a sell high. That's quite possible, but pick him up still, and then you can sell high in a few weeks. On the other hand, he is playing with Kevin Fiala. That's not his normal line mate. And I think that he's being set up for better looks this year because Fiala is such a good playmaker. So it's possible that he does end up with a higher shooting percentage than normal for the entire season. It's probably not going to stay at 20. But I do think we're looking at a career year from Trevor Moore, who already has eclipsed last year's goal total. He's done it in 19 games.
All right. The medium league pickup of the week is Alex Lyon, and that was a very important pickup for me. I did pick him up. He had a great game. I think it was like 38 saves or something like that. That really kept me in contention when I really needed it on the final day, to the point where I might actually keep him here now too.
Yes, he's available in 81% of leagues. I'm actually surprised that he's owned in that many because, of course, the Red Wings have Ville Husso and James Reimer. It's not like there's an injury. They're carrying 3 goaltenders right now. But we know, based on the way Steve Yzerman has behaved the last couple of summers, this is very much a win-now operation. They're going to roll with whatever's working. They need to make the playoffs in their mind this year. So if they have a goalie who's hot, they're going to keep rolling with him. And Derek Lalonde has said that. They're kind of going with the hot hand. Alex Lyon has started 3 out of the last 4 games for the Red Wings. He's got a .952 save percentage. And I don't know if it's going to last. Of course, he's a guy who's been a career backup at best. But it seems like the hot hand approach is going to stick, so you may as well ride him. Even if you just have him for a week, he might help you. He might give you a short-term boost. And goaltending is so random, it's not inconceivable that he ends up taking the job and running with it. He did that with the Florida Panthers last year down the stretch. He took the job from Sergei Bobrovsky, who won it back in the playoffs. But the point being, Alex Lyon has done this before. It's not like he's completely out of nowhere. So I think it's worth adding him in a medium league to see just where this goes. I don't think I'd add him in a shallow league just yet, but medium and bigger, I would go that route.
Okay, I like that one. Yeah, for me, I'm just holding on to him. For the start of the year, I had just one goalie. We needed 3 starts, and we only had 1 goalie slot. And I just like, okay, Georgiev's getting all the starts. Let's just do that. But they've actually not been playing him every single night. And I picked up Demko basically for free because someone dropped him by accident. And so picking up Lyon has been, that was helpful last night. So I'm looking to really capitalize on whatever I can get out of him. The deep league pickup of the week is one of the newest San Jose Sharks, Calen Addison.
Yes, he's available in 97% of leagues. The note I wrote down was Addison sucks defensively, which he does. He's basically a specialist at this point. You're not using him for his ability at 5-on-5, but the specialist element is actually very actionable here. He is the power play 1 quarterback for the Sharks. They traded for him for a reason. Not a big surprise to see him installed in that role. He's got 4 points in his last 4 games, and 3 of those are on the power play. So Calen Addison in a category league where you have power play points as one of your stats is someone who can help you in a deep format. Even though he's not necessarily a great real life player, I think he can sort of function like a poor man's Tony DeAngelo.
Okay. Speaking of Tony DeAngelo, a guy that struggles to stay in the lineup in a full-time basis. So there is that. The WTF pickup of the week is Nikolai Ehlers out of Winnipeg. Now, when it comes to him, we've talked before, being Mark Stone being one of your guys you just don't want to draft because of his injury history and everything. For me, it's Ehlers is my guy. But what are your thoughts here?
Yeah, I think that's fair because he burns a lot of people with those injuries. And I think that's why his ownership is surprisingly low. He's available in 63% of leagues. So I'm getting the sense that people just got fed up and they gave up on him. Ironically, the giving up on him is happening in the season where he's healthy. He was banged up in the preseason, but he's actually played 20 games, right? So that's the definition of irony to me. He's being given up on when he's actually healthy. But I think what's happened here is he's on the second line. He's not playing on the top power play unit. But to me, just based on his actual raw talent, we know he's tremendously skilled. He's got highlight reel ability, as we've seen recently with the goal. I think it was his goal on the weekend, right? Mm-hmm. Amazing speed as well. So I still feel like it's worth betting on him to climb back up that depth chart while he's healthy. He's got 51 shots on goal in 20 games. That's very useful. Scoring at a 25 goal pace, pretty decent. So if you're in a league that counts goals and shots, he's still helping you right now, even playing lower in the lineup. And if you just look at what he's done in the previous few seasons going into this one, yes, you're right, could not stay healthy, but was roughly close to a point per game in terms of his production. So I think if you're looking at the Jets lineup, I know Alex Iafallo has been a bit of a revelation, but I still prefer to bet on talent in the long term. And I feel like eventually Ehlers is going to work his way up higher in the lineup again, maybe power play 1 again. And when he's healthy, he's someone that I think should be owned in, 80, 90% of leagues. And right now he's owned in 37%.
Yeah, we saw what he could do, and like when he was healthy, full seasons a couple years ago. I have to stay away. I'm just nervous every single time because again, you look at him being injured all the time, but he's a you can't deny the talent. And he was one of my favorite. We talked a couple weeks ago about my favorite prospects, but watching him play in the World Junior A Challenge a couple years ago, and then with that same Denmark team going out there and surprising people, the World Juniors, was one of my favorite storylines of the World Juniors and in the Christmas time hockey spectacular. So I always want to see him do well. I can't trust him. What's today's special segment, sir?
Today's special segment is category league helpers. So decided to go with a segment where we're talking about guys that can help you in certain categories. I don't want them to be too obvious. So they're going to be players that are owned in 50% of leagues or fewer, or less, I should say. And that's sort of the format. So I'm going to give you certain players for certain stat categories that will help you. And what I'm trying to find is guys who won't kill you in other categories. So they're going to help you in this stat, but they're not too terrible in the other category. So I'm not recommending, for example, Matthias Michelli for assists because he destroys you in every other category. He doesn't shoot the puck. He's not physical. So we're looking for players that have at least a little bit of versatility and can give you a boost in specific categories.
All right, let's start with goals and shots, and that is Cam Atkinson.
Cam Atkinson, available in 80% of leagues right now. And this is the only player in the NHL who is in the top 30 in shots on goal and is less than 40% owned in Yahoo Fantasy. So that's someone I think you want to add to your team. He's got 8 goals, and he's always had a profile as a pretty reliable shooter. He just puts pucks on net. Obviously, the health is a risk, but he's free in 60% of leagues right now. So that risk is priced in when the player is free. So that's someone, at least in the short term, can help you in shots.
Yeah, like just looking at him this year, 14 points in 21 games. That's good for a guy who did not play a single game of hockey last year. And coming off of one of his better seasons the year before that. So I'm glad to see he's healthy because, again, it's been a rough little bit for him. Going out to San Jose, I have a hard time believing you really want to suggest a San Jose Sharks player, but Thomas Hertl.
Yeah, Thomas Hertl, someone who he's such a likable player. You kind of wish that he was in a better situation, but it's going to be hard to trade him in real life with that contract just beginning. But he's available in 65% of leagues. And it's interesting because early in his career, especially the 4-goal game, the legendary 4-goal game, but he was profiled more as a goal scorer. He's been a 30-goal man before, but right now he's becoming more of a distributor of the puck, had 40 assists last year, and right now he's on pace for a career high 47 assists. That's someone, and the reason why I recommend him in this category, going back to the Michelli example, Hertl's still going to be decent in the goal category as well. He does a little bit of everything. He still shoots the puck a decent amount too. So he's an asset in the assist category right now, but he doesn't kill you anywhere else, other than maybe in plus minus on that Sharks team.
Yeah, if your league does that, and we do just purposely to penalize people, don't pick a San Jose Sharks player. I think that's a kind of a given. Power play points, Josh Norris, another guy who has dealt with a bunch of injuries the last couple of years, but when healthy, he makes the Ottawa Senators a lot better.
Yeah, I feel like the Senators, because they've barely played lately, are a little bit forgotten. Josh Norris available in 68% of leagues, and his stat line, he's only playing 13 games so far, 5 goals, 5 assists, 10 points. So for casual drafters who are just sort of looking at season rank, his line doesn't really pop right now. Maybe that's why he's available in so many leagues. To me, he's a tremendous buy low. We saw what he could do when healthy. His combination of shots and goals and hits, very useful. He's centering the top power play unit. He's not Ottawa's first line center. That's Tim Stützle, but Stützle plays the point on the top power play unit, and Norris is still out there with a lot of talented players. So I think there are a lot more points coming, including power play points. And I made an offer for him last night. Like as I was making the notes, I'm like, ooh, I got to pause this and go make an offer. It was rejected, but I'm going to keep working on this GM because I think that Norris is a solid buy low.
Hopefully they do not listen to this podcast episode. All right, hits. Tanner Jano, a guy who, last year was a big trade target there for the Tampa Bay Lightning from the Nashville Predators. It didn't work out, but he still brings value.
That's right. He was that tremendous success story as a rookie, right? Had the 24-goal season last year. Now he's sort of become a punchline because of the trade last year. 5 picks the Tampa Bay Lightning gave up, including a first, to get him. And he was nothing short of a flop after they acquired him. But they still re-signed him, and he's 80% available in fantasy, by the way. But he's sort of settling in. It seems like he's getting more comfortable. And he sits among the league leaders in hits with 68. That's not a big surprise. But compared to other goons, compared to, let's say, someone like a Ryan Reeves, Janot is still getting chances. He's still popping in the odd goal. He's got 1.57 shots per game. For a bruiser type who you're adding for hits, that's decent, right? That's better than a lot of the hit, like the Matt Martins of the world are able to give you, right? So I like Jano as someone who you can add for hits, but he's going to at least give you a little bit in the other categories.
All right. Blocks, Brayden McNabb.
Brayden McNabb, always a major asset in the blocks category. Also the hits category. Usually he's a little down with his hit total this year. I think he's going to improve that, so I'm not too worried. He's available in 48% of leagues. And of course, playing in the Vegas Golden Knights, he's a really nice asset if your league counts plus minus as well. So he just gets a lot of ice time. He's a key member of the top four. He's going to get tons of blocks out there in shutdown situations, penalty killing situations, all that kind of stuff. And it's nice that he plays on a good team because he's going to give you a little boost in another category as well. He's not going to get you tons of points, but I think he contributes to enough categories that he's one of the better kind of banger specialists. If you like to fill your decor with those types, he's one of the best.
So people in my fantasy hockey league, this is actually a pretty important guy to be picking up. Let's talk goalies. Conor Ingram at 74% available.
Yeah, so obviously he shares the crease with Karl Vejmelka, but it's sort of become a competition there. They're almost in an even split. And I think the competition is open enough that Ingram could eventually take the job away. And he has outplayed Vejmelka so far, which is interesting because Vejmelka does have a good reputation or a growing reputation as sort of a really solid goalie on a bad team. But he is being outplayed by Ingram right now. And if you look at every goalie who's played at least 10 games this year, Ingram is 6th in the league in saves per 60 minutes. So he's busy. So is Vejmelka, but both these goalies are busy when they play. So if you're in a format where you can make daily transactions and you can stream goalies, Ingram is someone who's going to get you plenty of saves, but because he's not playing too badly, he's not going to necessarily totally torpedo you in goals against average, save percentage. Because if you're going to go that route just for saves, well, okay, you go with Mackenzie Blackwood, but I don't think you want all the bad that comes with it. At least Arizona's a little bit more competitive this year. So this can be a volume guy, gets you plenty of saves, but he could still win the odd game too.
Yeah, Ingram's not a bad goalie. I know you look at the career stats, nothing special, but he was a World Junior goalie for Team Canada. He was one of the top goalies in the AHL, and then got sent down to the ECHL. There was a lot of behind-the-scenes drama there. Eventually gets the call to play for Nashville in that series against Colorado in 2022. The Avalanche won that series in 4 games, but Ingram gave them a fighting chance, at least in that series. So he's not a bad goalie. He'd be someone where on a competitive team, I think he would really turn some heads. Like, I know he's probably not going back to Tampa Bay, but that would have been a good fit when Vasilevsky was gone there. So I am a believer in him there. And for the goals against and save percentage category, Varlamov.
Semyon Varlamov, available in 67% of leagues. The Islanders, they're perpetually very boring, but it doesn't mean they can't have anyone that yields fantasy value for you. And Varlamov is sort of the luxury backup of the NHL. He's as reliable as it gets. He's sort of like, he reminds me of what Yaroslav Halak was a few years ago. The guy who just comes in, puts great rate stats up every time he plays. This is his 5th season with the New York Islanders. He's never had a save percentage lower than .911 in any of those seasons. .930 save percentage this season, .916 for his career. So just in rate stats, pretty much when Varlamov plays, he's going to give you above average numbers there. Very nice to have in leagues where you can stream. If let's say the Islanders have a back-to-back, he's going to play. You can toss him in there, and he's possibly going to get you a shutout or just post you a nice high save percentage. So very reliable backup.
All right. It is time for the tip of the week. And I'm going to, call out one of the guys I play against in my pool because every Monday by around 1:00, he has made all 4 of his moves he can do for the week. And then complains at the end of the week that he's got oh my gosh, my goalies all got hurt and I can't replace them and I lose all the goalie stats. So sorry, Cameron, I'm going to call you out. But that is because impatience can be your friend early in the season. But it worked for him this week. I just don't think it's a great strategy, but why do you think it is?
Yes, and I agree with you. This tip doesn't apply if you have transaction limits. I think that's fair. Or at least if you have a really restrictive transaction limit. But it's more through the lens of trading. It can apply to pickups as well. And when I say impatience can be your friend early in the season, I'm not talking about the first week in terms of dropping someone who's off to a bad start. Now we're in week 8 of the season, right? So I think sometimes everyone is so slow to really get moving. I think part of it is because of fantasy football. I know in my league, I feel like the activity level really ramps up when the fantasy football season ends, and hockey's sort of more on the back burner, and people are maintaining their teams, but they're not really going for it. And that's an opportunity. If you're moving first, you can get the jump on your league, and that can help you in multiple ways. So if you're aggressive early on to make changes to your team, maybe there's someone who's selling a star player, someone whose team's going nowhere. You can pounce and get that player before anyone else does, before they're really engaged, before that seller team is shopping around. You can steal that player. Maybe you get a pretty good price. So you've already loaded up before the other teams have even woken up to it, because so many GMs, I think the majority of GMs like to be more conservative. I want to see what I have with my team. I want to wait a couple months. And the other thing is, if you load up early, if you really get aggressive earlier in the season, especially in a head-to-head format, but it works in Roto too. You can get a jump in the standings early, and it's always advantageous to be operating from a high perch in the standings. Then it's much easier to prey on the weak. If you load up, this is basically what I'm doing right now. I'll admit it if my other GMs are listening. I'm just loading up. I've made a ton of moves, way more than anyone else early, climbing high up the standings. And then you're in a luxurious position halfway through the season. You're going to find some desperate teams that want to make the playoffs. They don't know if they're going to do it, and they have a star player who's injured. Well, guess who can come in now with the low ball, who can afford it because you can afford to lose some games? That's you, because you got ahead early by being aggressive. So I think it pays. It sounds weird if I'm telling you basically to be the hare and not the tortoise, but consider being the hare early in the season, and then you can pivot to a tortoise later, but get the jump, because you can do so much more. Your roster is so much more malleable when you have the advantage of being high in the standings early.
Okay, you know what? This can't fully apply to my league, but in terms of like, this actually makes a lot of sense. So I'm not going to disagree with you there. So yeah, I last year I made a bunch of moves pretty early, got very aggressive, and built a team that was unstoppable the rest of the way. That worked out very well. Nobody really trades in my league because last year we had 4 teams. You could just drop and get another first line player pretty easily. But I made some aggressive moves pretty early, and it paid off.
Fair enough. Yeah. So you're more or less on board. Okay, Stephen, let's talk prospects now. I'm curious to hear more about this guy. I don't know a ton about him, so I'm very curious for your take on this goaltender.
Yes, this is Joel Blomqvist out of Pittsburgh, and I texted a friend who was at a game who was watching, I think it was Charlotte versus the baby Penguins out there over the weekend, and I said, their goaltending is pretty interesting. Watch out to see what Blomqvist could do if he plays, and I believe he had like a 48 save game. This is someone who came into a situation where Pittsburgh's goaltending is a little concerning if you look at their entire depth chart, but he was not super high on that, because when it comes to the WBS Penguins, they had a bunch of, they had Alex Nedeljkovic, who is a veteran goalie. They had Taylor Gauthier in there looking to get some starts. They had Magnus Hellberg. We know he's gotten some NHL starts and was pretty good. It seemed like anytime he switched teams. And you got Garrett Sparks, a longtime AHL goaltender. So he had to find a way as a 21-year-old to kind of really come in and surprise. And last year, he was the backup goalie on his Finnish league team. To another goalie prospect. It wasn't a veteran, but it was Levi Merelainen out of Ottawa. So he got beat out by another guy around the same age as him. So he had to come in this year and I think improve what he's capable of. Right now, he's got a 6-3-1 record. He's got a .926 save percentage. We don't have a ton of advanced analytics available to us in the AHL, but he's looking pretty good just from watching him now, I think 2 or 3 times, plus to see him with the Buffalo Prospects tournament where, he was a bit up and down, but when he was up, man, he is a good goaltender. Not a big guy by any means, like not a huge guy. I believe he is 6'2", but he moves so well. He's very flexible. He looks more like a much smaller goalie in the way he moves in his crease and makes up for a lot of that. So he's very composed too. He won't if he lets a bad goal in, he's probably not going to have that happen again. He's not going to let that tear apart his game. He's not going to fall apart. So the Penguins have a goalie here, 21 years old. Maybe in 2 to 3 years, he's pushing Tristan Jarry for stars and might be their long-term guy. The Penguins have not done a good job of developing players in the last couple of years. That's because they barely draft any. They're always one of the teams that have very few picks every year at the draft. 52nd overall in 2020, one of the better goalies from that draft. I'm thinking this is going to pay off.
Okay. It's interesting too, and you mentioned Tristan Jarry, because I think the game has changed to the point where, even 5-10 years ago, you look at Jarry and say, well, he's just signed a long-term extension. He's still going to be the guy for the foreseeable future. But now, just with the way teams manage the loads of their goalies, most teams have more than one goaltender that can have fantasy relevance. So even if you're looking just the potential for a platoon situation, that's worth way more than it used to be in fantasy. Just the future 1B. Look at what Philip Gustafson did last year in Minnesota, for example, former Pittsburgh Penguins goaltending prospect, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yep. So I'm a big fan of Blomqvist. I've become more of a fan than I was in the past. I thought he came in as this highly rated goalie prospect that kind of just didn't really blow up any leagues. But when he 2 years ago when he's playing with Carpat, he had 5 shutouts, a .94 save percentage, like unbelievable numbers. Fell a little bit last year, got outplayed, but right now he looks to be pretty comfortable where he is.
Okay, I will remember that name. Well, Steven, it's time for our best bet of the week. So I haven't dipped into the futures for a little while. I've been going more with the short-term betting, but I'm going to dabble. I'm looking at the Stanley Cup futures, haven't checked in for a while, and I see with the 12th best odds at plus 1,900, it's the Florida Panthers. And we already know this team is a Stanley Cup contender. They made it all the way there last year. So they have many of those ingredients. They lost some, of course, but they still have many of the core pieces of that team. And they got off to a surprisingly strong start this year, still second in the Atlantic Division. And that was despite going a month without Aaron Ekblad and Brandon Montour, their 2 most important defensemen. Now they have them back. So it's a great sign that we see a Panthers team that had enough depth to survive without them. Theoretically, should get into a rhythm and be even better with them. And that team has a lot of players on expiring deals. So it means a couple things. It means, I think, they're more positioned to have flexibility to make deals. If they need to send money out, they're sending out expiring contracts. It's easier to make things happen. Also, if they're making trades, they can also think about taking on players with more than 1 year. So multi-year rentals, because they can afford it with so many players going to free agency next year. They're going to have tons of cap space to play with. So if you're looking at, for example, Patrick Kane signing a multi-year deal or trading for a Travis Konechny, that type of situation, the Panthers can afford it. So I'm seeing a team that already looks pretty good and actually has room to get a lot better as the season progresses. They're further ahead of where they were a year ago in the standings. And to me, to have the 12th best odds, I think that's selling them a little short. So I kind of like the idea of throwing down a futures bet. What do you think of that one?
It's an interesting one because you look at the surface level stats, and Bobrovsky's numbers are nothing spectacular, but he's getting wins. He got a 9.61 record. He's got a .906 save percentage. Like those aren't like that save percentage is not great. They're getting some good goaltending, at least from Stolars. He's 3-1-0. He's got a .917 save percentage. But then you look at it, and the one thing concerning me is that Matt Tkachuk's not playing like Matt Tkachuk of last year. You look at the points this year, he's only got 3 goals and 17 points in 20 games. Like, still, going to put up solid numbers, but not to the almost MVP level we saw last year. Luckily, like Sam Reinhart's playing great. Carter Verhaeghe's having another decent season. Evan Rodriguez, what a great signing that was. And to everywhere he goes tends to be a good signing at this point.
Yeah.
But I'm maybe a little concerned about why Matt Tkachuk's not doing a lot. And he's actually a guy I sit a lot in fantasy.
Yeah, and I still wonder if he's still not quite right from the injury he suffered last year in the playoffs. It was pretty scary, that fractured sternum, right? I just don't know if it's affecting him. I know he declared himself 100% or he was medically cleared, but is it holding him back in the way he plays? On the other hand, to me, it's like if the Panthers are still this good with Matthew Tkachuk not playing like Matthew Tkachuk, that implies if he gets himself right, there's even more room to grow. So that actually makes me feel better. Maybe I'm just being too optimistic, but it makes me feel better about their chances. Okay, Steven, let's get to a couple listener questions.
All right, let's start off with one from David Stolman, who asks, which NHL goaltender in the trade rumor mill has a chance to be the most valuable in fantasy? And you can go a lot of different ways with this one.
For sure. And I think, David, the wishful thinking, I assume, is UC Saros. That's probably the player that every team who needs goaltending wishes it could get. But in an interview with our colleague Frank Cervalli, Barry Trotz, Predators GM, said that he's not trading Saros. I don't necessarily agree with that logic, Barry. You've got Askarov in the minors, man. But I digress. As far as we know, he's not available. Maybe that changes with an offer that knocks Trotz's socks off. So I'm not going to say Saros. To me, the name I would be looking at in terms of someone who could realistically get traded and see a major change in value, it's Marc-Andre Fleury. So right now, the Minnesota Wild, they're looking like a non-playoff team. You have Dean Evason just like dumping on his player. Like he might get fired while we're doing this podcast. It's that close, I think.
I've been watching.
Things are just burning down there. We know that Fleury, the contract is expiring. And we know he's talked about possible retirement this coming offseason. So that sets him up in a situation where, yeah, if you're on a team going nowhere, I know he wants to be close to his family, but if this is his final run, he probably wouldn't mind finishing his career on a playoff team. And of course, the Wild already locked up Philip Gustafsson to that contract, and they have the best goaltending prospect in the world, Jesper Wallstedt, waiting in the minors, dominating the AHL. They're totally set up for the future in net. You bring up Wallstedt, and you have your tandem with Wallstedt and Gustafsson. Fleury is absolutely expendable, in my opinion, for them. And he could be someone you could rent if you're trying to find a solution in net. So picture Marc-Andre Fleury in Edmonton, for example, maybe in New Jersey if they feel like they can't get what they need out of Vitek Vanacek and Akir Schmidt. So I think Fleury is someone who you could see parachuting into a very viable fantasy situation later in the season.
Okay, I really like that Fleury answer. That's a good one. Victor St. Martin asks, "Are you worried about Tyson Barrie? Usually great on the PP, but he's coming up dry." About 5 minutes before this episode, I actually got rid of him in my other team, my 12-team pool.
Yes, good question, Victor. And I was expecting to say, no, he's fine. He always gets home with his numbers. But I look closer. I am worried because he's not really playing on the power play, at least not to the degree he's used to. He's not currently on the top power play unit in Nashville. On the point, it's Philip Forsberg and Roman Josi. So Tyson Barrie, that's his thing. He's Mr. Power Play, and he's only toiling on the second power play unit. His season stats, his time on ice, 310 per game on the power play, but in November it's down to 235 per game on the power play. And even at even strength, 1854 a game, his ice time. That's his lowest in 10 years. So it feels like he's starting to get phased out as he's exiting his prime. And I don't know for sure that it's going to rebound. Maybe we see him back on the top power play unit. And in that case, yeah, if he's dropped and then he gets back on that unit, you pick him up, sure. But right now, I think there's legitimate cause for concern because it's not really him struggling on the power play. It's him just not being out there enough.
All right, that's that for questions, I guess, here. So what is the starting lineup for today?
Okay, so Steven, you are someone who loves to watch all kinds of hockey, and that means you have attended all kinds of arenas. So I want you to name your top 6 non-NHL arenas to visit.
All right, I'm going to start off with an honorable mention, and that is the Valiant Arena in Davos. And the reason it's an honorable mention is because I've never been there, but man, it looks so cool on TV. I want to go to the Spengler Cup so badly one year. I just kind of wish it didn't overlap with the World Juniors, but that is an atmosphere unlike any others. So I'm going to start off here with Scotiabank Pond, not to be confused with Scotiabank Arena, but this also happens to be in Toronto. This is where a lot of the U16 hockey happens. This is also where some junior A hockey happens, and a lot of commercials happen. You may have remembered the picture. You'll see a lot of ads, basically. If you see some hockey, a lot of the time, if it's not a Ford Performance Center, it's going to be at Scotiabank Pond. It's just because it's always available. A lot of players train there for the summer. We know Connor McDavid's always there. But it's 4 rinks. The OHL Cup, it's awesome. You've got games on like all the rinks. You can go anywhere you want, see anything that's happening. It's awesome. The Toronto Titans tournament's there too. So if you are a fan of Ontario under 16 hockey, the guys who are going up for the OHL draft, that is an arena you probably spent way too much time in, and I love it. One thing I don't like about it, though, is the netting all the way around the building. Screw that. I don't think that's, you know what? Let the fans get hit by pucks. I don't want to be watching through netting. That's not a lot of fun. Number 5, the Tribute Community Center in Oshawa. Now, I've only been there a couple times, but every time I go there, I'm amazed at how nice of a building that is. The outside looks great, big, fancy. It looks like it probably could be at least from the outside, it could be a minor pro stadium. You go inside, you can watch from anywhere. It's got like open viewing from everywhere. It's awesome. It's great. The music's good. The PR people there are great whenever I've dealt with them. So a big shout out to the Oshawa Generals there. Going to stick in the OHL, and you're going to see kind of a similar theme here. And that's the Auditorium in Kitchener. Worst press box I think I've ever been in, but an unbelievable experience otherwise. I say terrible press box because every time I've been there, we're all just completely squished in. But because it's really small, but the crowd is awesome. It's an old building, but it's got a lot of charm to it. It gets really loud. Even like I got to see when Shane Wright was playing there, and he was the big draw with the CHL Top Prospect game a couple years ago. That place was nuts. It was so much fun. I'm gonna hope to get back there potentially next month to go see the rivalry series game, Canada versus USA. So I'm excited for that one. Number 3, and one I go to a bunch of times throughout the year, is USA Hockey Arena. It's where the U.S. National Development Team plays, but it's also where we see the Hlinka Gretzky team practice, where the World Junior team practice, everything like that. It's an awesome arena. There's great viewing angles from everywhere. There are TV screens. The biggest drawback from a fan experience is I don't know what they're doing for speakers. I think they come out of like trash cans. They are terrible. In the press box, actually, it's really funny. I posted a picture once where there's space for like 5 people in there. Well, there's more than 5 media mostly at some of these events. And now twice I've been stuck right where there's 2 blinds that just get stuck together and they can't move. So the entire neutral zone, you just cannot see. I don't love that part, but I love going there. The food's awesome. Jet's Pizza down the road is great. The gas station nearby, I know that's kind of a random thing to shout out, but it's always good prices, and I get a lot of Chex Mix from there. So there's that. It's my favorite snack to get in the States. St. Michael's College Arena, number 2. Probably the coldest building I've ever been in my entire life. I was going to say,
that's the coldest.
It's so cold. The lighting is terrible, but it feels like a classic hockey barn. When I was doing some photos for the OJHL a couple years ago, I was wondering why nobody ever wanted to sign up for that one, because A, they would all get frostbite, and B, your white balance on your camera gets screwed up so badly. But it just felt like a classic old school ring. Again, you could kind of watch from everywhere. The DJ there, I swear, just steals my phone. It's picking like obscure Avenged Sevenfold songs, Slipknot. Like they play heavier music. It's great. It gets you pumped up, and that's what I like about it. Number 1. Actually, probably the rink I've been to the fewest out of all these, but left that big of an impression on me. The Budweiser Gardens in London. You just can't go wrong there. Where the London Knights play. Beautiful rink. It could probably hold an NHL team. The crowd is great there. There's a reason why London is the place you want to play in. There's never a bad night to watch a game in that rink. So those are my choices.
And the Budweiser Garden, that was the John Labatt Center before, right? Did they rename it? Yes. Because I was going to say that's a barn that I'm very familiar with because I went to Western. So I was there during the heyday of the London Knights when they had Corey Perry and Robbie Schremp and those teams that went on the legendary run. So that was a fun time to be around the London Knights.
I will add to it that there's the burger place, The Works, is nearby, and we went there with another writer, and we noticed a few. This was for the. I want to say it was the back when they did the prospect tournament back out in London, where it was like the Leafs, Habs, Sens, and Penguins, and a couple players on the Habs that were not playing that night had a very good time at the beer tap. I'll just say that.
Wow, that might be the first time I've heard of someone having a good time at the Works, because the Works sucks in my opinion. Which might be
what did you get at the Works? That sucks.
Okay, I'm going to save it. Let's make that the starting lineup for next week, and I'll go through. Maybe, I don't know if it's going to be worst burger joints or like best or something, but we'll workshop it, and maybe we'll find an excuse for me to rip on the Works. And we're going to end on that one. Hopefully we gave you some good ingredients for your fantasy lineup this week, and we'll be back next week with another episode. Thanks.